I'll be honest, I am not a huge fan of bicycles. Don't get me wrong, I think they're marvels of engineering. Or at least they became marvels of engineering after they ditched that ginormous front wheel. I mean, have you seen those 1800s bicycles? I'm surprised people managed to arrive anywhere at all on those things. And I get that bicycles are better for the planet. Still, I've never been comfortable on one. And yet, I have often wondered what it must be like at the center of one of those hardcore bicyclist groups. Fun fact, those are called pelotons, and this is not an ad, so I won't be saying that word ever again. But you know the groups I'm talking about. Each cyclist wearing wraparound sunglasses and skin-tight shorts, all in that streamlined, hunched posture, and the whole bunch pedaling madly in one throng like a pod of dolphins. What amazes me about watching a group like that is not the speed, the endurance, or the stamina. Instead, it's just the fact that they don't knock each other over. Somehow, none of these cycling groups ever dissolves into a tangled frenzy of arms, legs, torsos, chains, and wheels. At least they don't end up like that most of the time. Speaking of wheels, I wanted to play you a clip from L to L episode 2, from our interview with Natalie Tran.
The seesaw metaphor that you spoke about earlier when it comes to work-life balance is interesting. I think, however, that metaphor could be a little restricting because it feels like yes, it is a balance, but realistically, when you think about it, you don't have to choose either work or your life. How I like to think about it is kind of like a wheel metaphor, right? At the center of that is Saul, or at the center of that is Natalie, and around me, I have my school, I have my, personal life, I have my whatever, like on the different spokes that connects to the tire. Along that circle, right? A wheel doesn't exist by itself. A wheel connects to a car, and that car could be the social support that uplifts you and keeps you up and keeps the wheel running.
We owe Natalie a big, big thank you for introducing that idea. Danny and I loved the wheel analogy so much, we wanted to bring it back for this episode, as well as expand on Natalie's vision. A wheel takes you places, helps get you where you want to go. It moves you forward. One wheel is important. That's your support network after all. But wouldn't it be so much better, so much more efficient if you had 2 wheels, or 3, or even 4? If you could tap into the wheels of support of your friends and peers, if you could help them and have them help you, sharing acts of kindness with one another, moving each other along, pushing each other forward. Quite possibly, the whole enterprise would look an awful lot like that so-called throng of bicyclists. In fact, cyclists bunch up like that to reduce drag and to save energy. They work together to become more efficient. This even happens in competitive races. But outside of the Tour de France, people do exactly the same thing. The terms, I have been led to believe, are friendship, partnership, and community. As a student, and as a person in the world, it's important to be kind, to be helpful, and to be supportive. This is Learning to Learn, a Coastline College podcast. And today, we're reinventing the wheel. Kind of. Welcome to Learning to Learn. This is our penultimate episode, and with me again is Danny Pitaway, Coastline's Student Success Coordinator. Danny, this episode is interesting because for most of the season, we focused on the individual, how the individual can approach their schoolwork, their life, how they can work within themselves, essentially. But this episode is different because we're talking about going outside of ourselves. What do you think of that?
Well, life is not just about a solitary journey. So I think it makes perfect sense to talk about the people in our environment and our connection with our environment or our community.
Right. It's not a one-man band, so to speak. And in a classroom, especially, even if you're learning online, you're never necessarily by yourself. You have professors, other classmates, people who live in your apartment, family, etc. It goes back to Natalie's point from episode 2 about having a support system. But in that episode, she talks about being supported. Here we're talking about something else, right? How you can support others and why you should.
Yeah, in that episode, Natalie talked about herself at the center of a wheel, and the people who support her give shape and strength to that wheel. This helps me realize how our individual success is so closely linked with others around us.
Everyone who's a part of your wheel definitely needs their own wheel too. In order for them to best support you, they need to feel supported, feel helped, feel guided, feel kindness. And in our conversations with Claudia Vernon from episode 1, she touched on a cultural notion we have about individual success, the way culture encourages us to think for ourselves and no one else. Have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, there seems to be a sort of constant tension between two competing forces. On the one hand, you have this notion of helping others. And on the other hand, you have this notion of helping yourself. And in this podcast, we've encouraged a lot of reflection about ourselves and one's own goals and drive. But we need to also give thought to our neighbor, our classmates, how we can support others. I think a key lesson here is that it's not about helping ourselves versus helping others, but rather helping others is the way to help yourself. Being thoughtful and mindful about the people around you is the way to unlock your potential to achieve, to learn, to be happy, and to be successful. If I have a strong wheel of support, and you have a strong wheel of support, then together we make a bicycle. We can go farther and faster together than apart.
I guess what we're talking about is sort of 3 things in today's episode. The importance of the company you keep, the responsibility we have to be kind and helpful to that company, and the value derived from helping that company and helping each other.
Right. If you doubt yourself or struggle with self-esteem, look to see what you can do for someone else. If you feel really down and out, the way out is not through endless rumination, endless introspection. The way out is through helping and being mindful of others.
I know that to be true for myself. When I get out of my own head in support of others or a cause I believe in, then I can let my mind breathe, if that makes sense. My brain gets a chance to aerate, catch its own breath. When you put so much pressure on yourself, you put pressure on your mind.
Yeah, you can't control what happens in your world, but you can make someone else's day at least a little bit better, a little bit brighter. You lift yourself up by lifting up others. And those others, whoever they may be, are always going to be there.
100%. I guess what we're saying is that you're never really alone. You exist, we all exist on a street as part of a neighborhood. That neighborhood may lie within a suburb or a city or on a row of rural houses. And wherever you find yourself, you're also in a state or a country in the world on Earth. So you exist within a community. A huge part of life is just truly bound up with the communities we're all a part of. And even if you don't feel like you're a part of your community or any community, you are.
Yeah, helping someone else, being kind, being supportive is also the right thing to do. It just is. Only you can determine for yourself how much of your time and energy you want to put forward in this enterprise, but it's definitely time well spent.
Coming up on Learning to Learn, our interview with Claudia Mojica, Coastline's academic counselor. Stick around, stay tuned. You know the drill. Welcome back to Learning to Learn. We are here with Claudia Mojica, who is a counselor at Coastline College. Claudia, can you introduce yourself and your role at Coastline?
Sure. Thanks for that, Saul. So my name is Claudia, like you said, and I am a counselor for a few different programs here at Coastline. Namely, they fall under the umbrella of EOPS. For those that don't know EOPS, we are a civil rights enacted program. So we came about as a direct consequence of the 1960s civil rights movements. And we exist to help provide over and above opportunities for students that may be first in their families to go to college or may come from underserved communities. So the programs I represent are EOPS, Next Up, Guardian Scholars, Umoja, and also CalWorks. It's a lot of programs. And along with that, I'm also an associate professor here at Coastline.
And what do you teach, if I can ask?
Counseling. So I'm a counselor and I teach counseling courses, they're really cool because while our sister subjects like psychology and sociology are usually very immersed in the theory, the counseling tends to be more practical. So we cover some theory, but it tends to be more practical approaches to, being a successful student and, leading a fulfilling life.
That sounds perfect for this podcast. I think we're all about practicality here, so it makes sense. The theme of this episode is essentially be supportive, be kind, be helpful. Where do you find those in your own work, and what role can they play in a student's life in terms of helping others?
Well, I think those things definitely encompass all aspects of the work that I do, whether I'm in a counseling session with a student, or I'm teaching, or I'm working on, helping to plan an event for our students. And to explain that a little bit better, in meeting with students, this new style of meeting with folks in a remote capacity, in virtual styles in many cases, we have to be a lot more intentional with what we do, right? So whereas before I could walk out and that there were aspects of my mannerisms, the way that I speak or the way that I move, a smile that would allow students to feel invited into that space. It is different now because it's not just about me inviting a student into my space, which is at home right now, but it also means that they are going to let me into their space, their home, or wherever it is that they happen to be, engaging in this meeting through. So I always try to make sure that, that people know that if they're coming in through Zoom, their cameras are optional. They don't need to have theirs on, but I have mine on. I make sure that people feel acknowledged. So I provide a warm greeting. I take some time to just explain what we're going to be doing so that students understand that the whole purpose of this exchange that we're having, that it's about making sure that they understand all the possible services and resources that will be available to them at Coastline during their time here. So essentially, I think that our program is in the business of people brokering. They begin with us, and then we try to help students make as many connections with other people on campus that can help them. So that means that for those of us that work in EOPS and CalWorks, it's really important for us to maintain good relationships with our colleagues here at the college. It's essential for the success of our students.
That makes sense. And you talked a lot about creating a welcoming environment for students. Is that something that you think students can take forward in their own lives when they're interacting with other people?
Definitely. I mean, there has been a pretty big learning curve for all of us, right? Zoom used to be a small piece of our lives, if that. And now for the majority of us, if we're students or if we work in education or in a lot of different helping professions, we're spending the majority of our times in front of a screen. And we do have to learn a different way of engaging, of making sure that in our actions and in what we're saying, we're conveying that we want to be there and that we are happy to have the person that is there with us be a part of this. To directly respond to your question now, Saul, these we don't know how long we're going to keep working this way, right? We're all hoping that we keep moving forward and we're able to transition into being able to go back to engaging in person. But for the time being, I think the skills that people develop as far as communicating this way are helpful for us, right? They are part of our skill set now, that no matter what we end up doing in the future, it's a skill set that we can talk about. And it is especially important for anyone looking to find employment right now, so that you learn to really help project your own personality into the folks that are in that other room, in that other space.
That makes a lot of sense. I totally agree with that, and actually led me to a sort of off-topic question, which is talking about skill sets and transferable skills. And it seems to me like a lot of, and it's something we've covered on the podcast before, but it seems to me like too often students don't recognize that what they're doing is a transferable skill. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yes. So we've actually been having a lot of conversations, or I've been having a lot of conversations with my students about the new transferable skills that they're developing as a result of this, right? And one of the things that's very interesting to me is that, like team building, right? So before people were, they were having an easier time not having to put themselves out there and look for a team. So now it's more important. They need other folks to help them. And also like just making that human connection has become so much more important to us. It's something that I think we used to maybe take for granted before. And now we really want to have other people in our time and spaces. So being able to use your technology to reach out and establish virtual communities, like virtual supportive communities for yourself, whether that is made up of your family that you engage with once a week to do like a Zoom check-in, your friends or your classmates. I think that's probably the biggest, takeaway from this, that we have to take some time to schedule things. Beyond that, also like our writing abilities are really important right now. So if we are not able to, if we don't have the time on screen to convey our ideas, then we really have to make sure that we're using our resources like Danny in the Success Center to go in there and making sure that our writing is on point, so that we're really doing a good job in our discussion boards and with engaging with others, communicating our ideas, in writing as well as, verbally. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I can't think of anything else right now. I'm sure there's others, but anything come to mind for you, Saul?
No, I think that was well said, 100%. And you basically looped us right back into the topic of the podcast when you talk about building a team or having to create a team of people, and talking about creating a support network, which is exactly what this episode is all about anyway. And it's about, when you have that support network, and whether you're building it virtually and bringing it into the real world, when that change happens, or you had it in the real world and you learned how to use it virtually and you'll continue taking it with you into the future. Regardless of all of that, this episode is about the importance of that and the importance of helping provide that for other students, right? And other people around you.
One of the interesting things that's come up with a couple of my students who identify as introverted is that they tell me that they actually find it easier to create like communities for themselves in this space, that they don't feel the pressure of putting themselves out there as much. And it was interesting because I have one that was usually really reserved, and now she's really different, meeting through Zoom or on the phone. And she was telling me, she's like, yeah, I decided to take the lead and like create my own, work group and stuff. So she created a space in her classroom where people that wanted to could join in there and they could help each other in the class in chemistry. And that's not something that I would have expected. Like I encouraged her to do, but it didn't seem like she would, and she did.
Right. No, that is super fascinating. And again, speaks to the theme of the episode of creating a space that other people can come into and actually learn from, and not take advantage of, but to be able to be with you, learning from you, or creating a space the way she did that allows not just you to thrive, but other people to thrive as well. And that, I guess, takes me to my next question is, when you think about student success, what kind of habits or characteristics do you feel are important?
Well, I think, in my opinion, first and foremost, there's that topic of community again, right? And sometimes I have students that I speak to that maybe the people that were born to didn't create a good community for them per se, right? But now they have the full capacity to go out and create their own communities, their own families, right? That family can mean a lot of things. Sometimes it's people that we're born to. Sometimes it's people that we, collect and make a part of our lives. So whatever that looks like, it's important to have it in some way. I know, like, I always like to share my story with students where I let them know, like, in my family, I was the first one to get through high school, right? And while my family wanted to be supportive, they didn't know how to. They didn't understand the way higher ed worked or, the expectations around that. And to be honest, I don't feel I understood that very well myself. But I found my people at the college. I became part of EOPS. My counselor was a Chicana. She was also first generation college student. And then it wasn't only important for me to do well for my sake, but I liked her and I wanted her to be proud of me. So I worked really hard to make sure that when I met with her, I could tell her, yeah, things are going well. She made me feel comfortable and welcomed. And we have that sense of connection where I could see myself in her and I could be really honest and also speak to her about those, challenges that were coming up. And she always provided me with, just really good direction. I felt like I knew what to do when I left her office. Building that community, having at least one person that you feel like, yeah, that's my person, that's my safety, that is essential.
That makes a lot of sense. And it is heartwarming, and just like, yeah, like it seems like even just her presence alone was helpful to you in making you feel like you could succeed better as a student and beyond just being a student.
Yeah, it was essential. So I totally understand how for a lot of my students, these special programs that they are a part of, or who, whatever offices or people they make a connection to, those people are very important, especially for those that may not have folks in their, in their group of loved ones that get what this experience is like and what it can take out of you some days.
I feel like you are, from talking with you, you are kind of a great example of exactly what this episode is about, which is someone who needed support and looked to find support for themselves when they were in school. And after that is now providing support for other students and other people. So I guess I just wanted to say, like, I super admire that and respect it, have all the respect in the world for it and for you, but also just like, you are a great example of someone who has done that, who has felt support and kindness and help and taken that forward and provided that for other people, which is amazing and exactly what this episode is about.
Well, thank you for saying that, Saul. To me, it's a really big deal to be on the other side of the desk now, where as a student, I was on one side, and now, I was able to do what I needed to through my education. And one other aspect of this is that, like, these connections that we make, especially for those of us who don't have people that can help open doors into the places we want to get into, they really are essential. If we don't come from a family of means where we have folks there that can help create those opportunities, then the community that we build out for ourselves, those are the people that are going to help us get there. So I've had a lot of mentors along the way, beginning with my EOPS counselor at community college. And, I always tell students, for all of us, once we get through what we need to here, what we're trying to do here, we have to reach back out and, help pull someone else up so that they can keep doing that. Related to your topic of kindness here.
Right. No, exactly. That is exactly what we are trying to talk about. It's like paying it forward. You are helping and you're bringing people along with you as you go along. And when you've made it that kind of step ahead, you can say, like, hey, everybody, I've turned this corner. Like, let me help you turn this corner with me, or help you turn this corner now that I've seen what's kind of beyond the bend or whatever. So that's awesome. And I guess on that topic, we've talked a lot about supporting other people, and part of supporting other people is being kind. And what do you think the value of being kind is?
We think that in being kind, that it's only good for the person that you're kind to, but not so much. There's this thing that happens to all of us when we do something good for someone. We tend to feel better, either because we see that that person was happy or grateful, even when they're not able to express the gratitude in response to whatever act of kindness we provided. We can also take a moment to say, okay, well, we did what we could there. Let's see what else we can help that person connect to.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I think it reminds me of times when I was in high school and there were subjects, I didn't really understand. And there were subjects, some of my friends or just even acquaintances, just people around the high school did understand well. And there was an inverse where I understood a subject and they didn't. And you just sort of it doesn't have to be even formal, like a tutoring relationship. It's just sort of that informal exchange of information of just like, oh, you don't understand. Well, let me try to help you. And they're like, well, do you need trouble? Do you need help with anything else? It's being helpful. It's being kind, but it makes you feel good too. Cause you are just like, I can't even describe it. It's just, I think we all know, or hopefully know, what kindness feels like, or when we do it for when we, do acts of kindness, but it is, there's a feeling of not reciprocity, but just that, like, you do something for someone, or give something to someone, and that you help them at least in some form or fashion, and that that feels good.
Yeah, and we don't know what other people's, like, what the details of another person's life look like, right? Maybe they come from a family or a group of loved ones that are supportive, right? But they're having this tough moment and there's no one there around, and you can be there, and that's helpful. But maybe they don't have anyone else in their lives that can, be there to help and support them. And then what you do, however small it may seem to you, might be a really big deal in their lives.
No, exactly. That's, again, another great point. And something else we wanted to touch on in the episode, and you hit on it exactly, which is people not realizing how much they can help people with just small phrases or words, or a genuine "how was your day?" and wanting to actually hear someone give the thoughts of how their day was to you, and being and just being there for people, even in small ways, or what seems like a small way to you, like you said, can actually can feel bigger to someone else.
Yeah, you never know what that person's state of mind is in that given exchange, right? You don't know what they're struggling with or what they're going through. And maybe you just taking a moment to check in on them and see how they're doing. That shows that person that someone out there does care about them.
I guess, again, like on that subject, the podcast is to some extent about success and students' success and how we can help students achieve whatever they want to achieve. What is the relationship between an individual's success and the company we have around us, the communities we've built or are built and are there for us upon arriving in a place? What does that relationship look like?
Well, if you were to ask my grandmother that, she would say everything. We have all these sayings in Spanish about the company we keep, so I'm going to share them because I think they're great. One of them is, dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. So tell me who you're with and I will tell you who you are. And the other one is, si con lobos andas, te enseñarás a aullar. So like if you hang out with wolves, you're going to learn how to howl. And my grandmother would always say that, you are the company that you keep, right? So if you are hanging out with people whose values align with your own values, then you're all going to encourage each other towards the same things. So if you are a person who wants to go to school, you want to work hard, it's important for you to do the most that you can to achieve your goals, and you have other people that also feel that way, then it's going to be easier for you to find that support. Now, if it's on the other end and you find that in your company of friends that you're the only one that wants things like this, that is willing to put forth the effort and sacrifice the things necessary to achieve your goals, then you need to go out and find a community of other people that are like-minded so they can help keep you on track and help keep encouraging you towards those things that you want to achieve.
That was perfect. I could not have said it any better myself. And you hit that was like a home run of an answer. It's like a grand slam home run, of an answer. I mean, and all your answers have been like that. I had no idea that there were all those phrases in Spanish specifically tied around just that idea and that notion. So that was super awesome.
Oh my gosh. I feel like at least, Mexicanos, like we speak in like codes. My grandmother, my mother would give me these phrases and then you would be thinking like, what did they mean? And sometimes it wasn't until, we got older, we would look back and, oh, that's what they were trying to say with that. So yeah, they're really good about coming up with those phrases.
It's 100% true. Those are great. And they're so illustrative of exactly what we're talking about, and about that idea of being around people, like you said, who share your goals, and again, are there to support your goals. And hopefully because you have like-minded values and same goals, you're there to support them. And you create, it's like a feedback loop almost of support, and that can go a long way in helping, a student in or out of the classroom to succeed.
Well, yeah, it's like one of the ways that I like to explain it when I lecture is that being a college student is really getting to know a whole other culture, right? And when you have people that are part of the same culture, then you don't have to explain as many of the needs. You can put your needs out there, but they're going to pick up on a lot of other things that you may not be saying. So the whole idea of coming from different cultural spaces, like when we're speaking about ethnic cultures, that's one aspect, right? So we have all these intersecting layers that happen when you come to college. But now if we talk about how do you identify a college student, right? If you're at Starbucks and you see somebody with a laptop and a backpack, you know what they're a part of. You know what culture they are a part of. So it's kind of the thing that I speak to. We bring all these other experiences into college, wherever our college is at. But we know that within that space, we all have this shared experience of being students. And that's part of it. If you can surround yourself with other folks that get that experience, then they're going to provide you with the type of support that you need to continue on in that experience.
Right. No, that was also a home run answer. But yes, and totally just cements and yeah, is a great way of putting exactly what the notion of the podcast is, which is we come from all these different places and we arrive and we join in this almost like a reservoir, and that reservoir is college, and all this gets filtered into the college experience. But yeah, like you said, you walk around, backpack, coffee, maybe some tired eyes, maybe you got ear pods, slung in. Your backpack is like way too heavy for like any logical sense. You're a college student.
Yeah, you're like, ooh, I know who you are.
Welcome back to Learning to Learn. You just heard our interview with Coastline counselor Claudia Mojica. Danny, what did you come away thinking about from that interview?
Well, I really liked everything that Claudia said, but in particular, I enjoyed listening to her discuss her role at Coastline and how welcoming she is with students and how being kind and supportive can make a huge difference. Another thing that made an impact were her comments about how important it is to keep company around you that mirrors the values and goals that you have.
Right. Her mom and grandmother told her these Spanish expressions that really captured the idea behind that question. She also talked about the impact of moving education entirely online due to the pandemic. Do you think that ties in with the theme of the episode of be supportive, be kind, be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. The pandemic forced college education to go online entirely. And while this presented a range of challenges, it also presented new opportunities for engagement in ways that were not possible before. Students who might be reluctant to speak up in a face-to-face classroom can feel empowered to speak, to write, and to share in virtual spaces. There are new opportunities to form a community with your classmates through various online communication tools. So the transition to online learning has created a host of new ways that students can demonstrate kindness and support.
Claudia also talked about the impact you can have on a person without even realizing it. Why do you think people forget that or don't recognize that?
Well, it's so easy to dismiss the influence we have on others and to think that our actions don't matter. I think this happens for a variety of reasons, but we have to remember the circle that Natalie spoke about in episode 2. Just as you have people in your wheel or your circle who support you and help you move forward, other people also have their own circles or wheels that you may be part of. Therefore, it's important to remember that we always have the ability to help others, no matter what we may be struggling with or going through. And I think it's worth mentioning that looking to help others is precisely the way to improve not only another person's situation, but our own as well.
In episode 2, you built a wheel. Congrats! You accomplished what our ancient ancestors, way back when the concept of fire was lit, couldn't. But one wheel can only take you so far. One of the experiences of life, one of the joys, is hitching your wheel to another person's, making a bicycle, and going for a ride together. As Claudia told us that her grandmother told her, and I won't attempt the Spanish because I'll only bungle it. If you hang out with wolves, you're going to learn how to howl, which is honestly the coolest expression I've ever heard. The other expression went, tell me who you're with and I'll tell you who you are. And a version of that also goes, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. And obviously, we're not all friends with each other. We don't need to be. But to really steamroll this analogy right into the ground, your wheel is already connected to someone else's. As a matter of fact, it's connected to everyone else's. That might be too touchy-feely for you, and I get that, but that doesn't make it untrue. Small pebbles still create a ripple in the largest lake. Small actions, positive or negative, have an impact. Danny and I wanted to end with something witty. Something about wheels and pebbles and circles, all going around and around. But what actually matters is striving to be thoughtful in everything that you do. See you next time on Learning to Learn. Thank you to Claudia Mojica for her openness and wisdom. This episode of Learning to Learn was hosted by yours truly, Saul Rubin, and co-hosted by Danny Pitaway. It was produced, edited, and written by Saul Rubin and co-written by Danny Pitaway. The L2L themes were written and produced by Elijah Rubin. Special thanks to Coastline College, Don Wilson, and the entire marketing team.